Hey guys, Tom Barclay here, just outside Tottenham's training ground. I've just done the press conference with Ange Postecoglou and Heung-min, previewing the Europa League opener against Qarabag tomorrow night on Thursday. So I'm just going to do a little walk and talk as I head back to the station. So quite a few topics up today. Often when you have the Champions League, Europa League games, that's when you get a player doing a press conference as well. That's why Son was up. And there were quite a few lines from him in particular about a range of subjects, so let's talk about them. I think probably top of the list is his comments on Rodrigo Bentancur. Now we know what has happened and what Bentancur faces as a result of his comments, discriminatory comments towards Son and South Korean people, I guess. During an interview over the summer, he apologised, but the FA have still charged him, and because of the aggravated nature of his comments, the FA are likely to advise to the independent regulatory commission that hands down the punishment a 6 to 12 game ban. We'll see what happens, but Son was asked about it. He said that obviously it's an ongoing situation with the FA, so he couldn't comment too much on it. But one thing he did was talk about how much love he had for Rodrigo Bentancur. Said it quite a few times, how much he loves him. Talked about how he was on holiday at the time. He had no idea what was going on and got this very sort of long message from Bentancur, sort of explaining how sorry he was. Not Arsenal today, mate, just Spurs. Arsenal around here? Only Tottenham, mate. I'll tell you later, I'm doing it at the moment, but cheers. Yeah, back to Son, some new fans. So Son, so talking about Rodrigo Bentancur, it's obviously a very serious subject. Talked about how much love he had for Bentancur. He talked about how, as I said, Bentancur got in touch when they were on holiday, explaining the situation, apologising, and then when they actually were back together, sort of in public, how Bentancur almost cried when he was apologising. He was so sorry for what he'd done, and that they will move on as brothers. So very much saying there's no problem at all between them. He has said that before on social media, but yeah, pretty much sort of stating the case for Bentancur. And it will be interesting to see what happens with the FA, because he could, if he wanted to, and it's totally down to Son, he could actually speak on Bentancur's behalf. Maybe he may have even done that by now, who knows, because all those things will come into consideration when it comes to the panel working out how to punish Bentancur for these comments. Anyway, so that was a big part of it. Then he talked a lot about player welfare. Obviously this has been a topic amongst a lot of players and across football at the moment, particularly Rodri, suggesting they might even go on strike from playing too many games, particularly with the extended and newly created FIFA World Cup that's planned for next summer for Chelsea and Man City, who are involved in that. And Son was pretty strident about this as well. He said that players aren't robots. He said that the injury risk at the moment is massive, and it's not fair. It's not fair to expect players to be playing sort of 70 games. Now, obviously, Son is sort of in quite a good position to say these kind of things, because he's one of those players who travels the longest distances. He always goes back to South Korea to turn out for his country very proudly for years now. But it's obviously a long way for him to travel. It must be quite draining. All right, last season Spurs barely had any games. They only had 41 fixtures because they weren't playing in Europe, and they crashed out the cups pretty early. But this year, obviously back in Europe and hoping to go further, it does make quite a difference. He said that a reduction in games is important. It needs to happen effectively. He said it's not on the players to sort it out, but it needs to happen. So very sort of stringent on that. And Postecoglou talked a bit about this as well, saying that it's reaching sort of dangerous levels, the amount of games that are going on, and can understand why players might look towards strike action. It'll be on the players. So that was interesting. Then Son talked about his contract. I asked him specifically about it because it seems to be a little bit lack of clarity over what's the situation with him. His deal is up at the end of this season. He's obviously the captain, he's obviously a key player, but he's also 32, so sort of wondering what's going to happen with Spurs. He said in the answer to it that effectively there hadn't been talks yet, and he's just focused on this season and trying to win a trophy and giving his all for the club. Now I understand, I don't think it's been widely reported, to be honest, but I understand that he does have a 1-year option on his contract, which is in Spurs' favour to trigger, and that they will do that. When they do, I don't know, but it's pretty sure that they're going to do that. So that was a bit of news on his potential situation. And then he also talked, finally on Sun, before we move on to Postecoglou, about Mikey Moore. And obviously Sun is now one of the most experienced heads in the dressing room, and the captain, of course. And Spurs' dressing room generally has been rejuvenated in recent years under Postecoglou. And Mikey Moore is the youngest of the lot. And a real talent. Sort of wonder if he might even have a chance to be involved, maybe even start this game, given all the other fixtures that are going on at the moment. We'll see. But he absolutely waxed lyrical about Mikey Moore. What a player he thinks he is. He talks about him being fantastic boy who asks lots of questions, which Sun really finds fun talking to him about it, advising him on any tips he can give, because obviously they play in similar positions. He said he sort of advised people to not put too much pressure on him, but he seems to be very, very excited about young Mikey Moore, as are pretty much everyone at Tottenham. And it's funny, I was thinking about Moore and Qarabag, because I remember covering Arsenal's game against Qarabag in the Europa League back in 2018, and a very young Bukayo Saka made his full debut that day and caught the eye instantly. And it was mainly through sort of injuries that Arsenal had and rotating players that he got his opportunity. And obviously we know what he's gone on to do since and what a great player he's turned out to be. And, you know, not to sort of do what Sun advised us not to do and hype him up too much, but there is a lot of excitement about Moore. And you do wonder if he might get a chance against Qarabag. And let's see where we go from there. Maybe in 6 years' time I'll go, well, that was the game, just like Saka, which really sort of launched his career. Who knows? Talking about Ange, it was, to be honest, Sonny was more of the talking point this week. We obviously speak to Postecoglou every week, and he's such a good speaker that there's always normally something worth quoting. And he still had a few little quips here and there, but it didn't feel like there was quite as much sort of news to sort of glean from him this week. But one thing he was asked about was the dark arts. Obviously Arsenal use of them at Man City in particular, and at Spurs last season with Ben White sort of fiddling with Vicario's gloves, has come up quite a bit. And he was asked a bit again about him, and it was quite funny the way he sort of responded to the particular way the question was framed, as if it was a sort of good versus evil was the quote, or Batman versus another superhero that he couldn't think of because he didn't know his superheroes too well. But he says it's not quite like that. There are lots of ways of skinning a cat, ways of winning a game, I suppose, and it's just not for him. It's not what he knows, but he knows it can be a very effective tool, he said, for other teams, and it's just something that means when teams are doing against his side, he just says that his team needs to be on it even more to make sure that they respond and don't get distracted by them. But yeah, can't ever see Ange employing the dark arts based on his comments. Talks about Europe being an opportunity for growth for his team and young players, sort of hinting, I suppose, at rotating squads and giving players opportunities. And you know, this is obviously his first European game as Spurs manager, and a lot of maybe first European games for Tottenham for a lot of the squad. So yeah, he sees this as a sort of key step in his side getting to where he wants them to be. Talks about James Maddison, who I thought had some really interesting comments after his game against Brentford, which weren't widely picked up, but he spoke in the mix zone afterwards to some of my colleagues for the Monday papers. And I remember sort of waxing lyrical about how good Maddison was against Brentford and wondering whether that was his best game. Well, that's what he thought. He thought that was his best game in a Spurs shirt. and he was talking all about how much he was enjoying it, but he was also backing the Postecoglou style. He sort of said there were some players out there in different teams who won't be enjoying the style of the play of the manager, even if they're winning games, but that's definitely not the case, and they've really bought into the Postecoglou way, which was quite interesting. And off the back of that good performance, and the fact that he seemed to be playing deeper rather than sort of number 10, he was a bit more of a number 8, I suppose, more of a central midfielder with Kulusevski ahead of him. He was asked by my good friend Tom Orr at the Times, Postecoglou that is, is he playing in a different role? And Postecoglou sort of pushed back on that completely and said it wasn't any different. But he said the key difference now, and he's consistently said this throughout, is about being up to speed physically, I suppose, after that long injury. And the fact that Maddison now can be involved more in various different phases of play. So that was a key element for why he's playing so well at the moment, or why he's seems to have got back into decent nick. And that pretty much wrapped it up. I mean, when you look at the squad going into tomorrow, obviously Romero suspended from that red card he got against Milan all those years ago, feels like forever ago. Reguilon and Spence obviously ineligible. So when it comes to the lineup, you think Forster would have a chance of starting, purely because he is in the squad and Spence isn't, so you'd think he would play. Man United at the weekend, and they've already played a tough game on Saturday. It feels like there's going to be a lot of changes again, whether that be Archie Gray coming for Porro, Dragazin you definitely think would start, maybe Ben Davies comes in for Doggy, Van der Ven probably plays. In the midfield, you think Bergvall would start again. Bissouma probably comes in for Bentancur. Pape Sarr is probably due a game as well. And then up front, we were speculating whether Moore might even start in this game. I still think you want to keep giving Solanke minutes. I'd probably start him through the middle, and then Son, since he did the press conference, you'd expect him to play as well. And I think Johnson's in a good vein of form, which you probably want to continue as well. So wouldn't be surprised if he was in too. But we'll have to see. Timo Werner's obviously due minutes as well. Odegaard injured, but options for Postecoglou, and it'll be interesting to see how strong his lineup is, given that he talked about Europe being on the horizon as justification for making so many changes against Coventry in the League Cup. So we'll see. Until next time.